Microphone check. 1 2 1 2. I wonder if the words coming out my mouth are getting to you. Wanted to do a review today. No bootstraps when you're barefoot. This guy Wes Hall, Jamaican fella, penned a book back in 2022, and it's a memoir of sorts, but certainly exfoliating his values through his career, and knowing that we're cultured from our experiences, and the things that Wes explained that he experienced, most people haven't. I see some mirrors in my own life, not just being of the Jamaican diaspora, but literally, being on my own without a father for many years, and mom was a little distracted by her own life and experience when I was young, being a very beautiful woman, Jamaican model, and I gravitated to this book, especially when I was going to the library to give myself some focus on a very important project called kapok. And what kapok is it's a tree. It's a tree that inspired me in Jamaica while I was walking around the hurricane damage from November 11th for about 30 days before I come back here to Canada. And just letting it sink in a little bit, what I saw and experienced, and what I became from that experience was more of what I already am, and able to channel a lot of my systems thinking, my organized chaos of an interest map that I may have is all connected to me and carries me further on my path. But in the book, he explains his career journey, around Toronto, being young and on his own, working at a bread factory, and I think he was at a chicken slaughterhouse for a second, sucking guts, and was sensitive about that, and found his way to an opportunity in a mail room down on Bay Street, and literally became a sponge out of necessity because he wanted to level up. Knowing where he came from, he knew that his perspective was very different from the people in the place that he was participating. His perspective was everything's a blessing. His perspective was that being a running back, you're always going to take hits, but you got to find the pockets and move and shake and, finesse your way through. And he really found a way to finesse his way through strong, disciplined habits of becoming better and taking note and being a real student of life. And I identify with that 1,000%, being an entrepreneur myself. The whole spike on the water, we beautify boats is a very WASP industry, white Anglo-Saxon peoples, and often being the only person of color in a 10-kilometer radius. It felt like a lot of times. It still feels that way in any room, in any meeting, in any expo, in any marina, in any yacht club. I'm usually the only person of color, and when I do see other people of color, we check in. Usually it just takes a nod, say, hey, good to see you. How's life? But Wes, he took it to a whole nother level, given his station in life now. Being a proxy surgeon of sorts. He helps companies sort out their proxy votes for board decisions when they have an AGM They have to have their shareholders vote, and a lot of people aren't showing up in time. And he moved from a banking space into this proxy space as a business development manager, and had to find a new model of doing business to satisfy his competitive heart. And there are other people in this space that like to brag on old accomplishments, and he's like, okay, I'm new kid on the block and I need to prove myself. And that's often the way we feel as black people, is when we show up in different spaces that we've got something a little bit more to prove than just so we can do a good job, that we can be exceptional, that we could be the GOAT, is what we're about. Like, I see the tasks in front of me, and let me make no question about it when I'm done. And that's the way I do boats, top to bottom, front to back. Interior, exterior, clean and wax and polish, compound, wood refinish, light gel, repair, steam cleaning from the top of the canvas right down to the inch mounts. Basically, any boat, box, old, burnt, sunk, rot, or refuse in the province of Ontario has been my business to make beautiful for the last 30 years. As I've been penning my own book, we're going to call it Sticks in the City, because I've always been a little bit too country for the city and a little bit too city to stay in the country. I found my way to marinas and yacht clubs and all those whistling masts at this time of year, which is January something. I just finished this book, and I recognize that as I am penning my own memoirs, Wes, what you did with your book was beautiful. The way the picture was painted was beautiful. I respect to your editor. I'm gonna listen to the credits again to figure out who you work with. But I was speaking to my own editor just a couple evenings ago. Last night? No, day before last. I was chatting with her, and day before that, I started listening to the book. Yesterday, I finished the book while I was driving back from helping Mom launch mywisdomoasis.com, her next chapter of mastery. But before I diverge too far, I just want to thank Wes Hall for having the heart to push forward, to find a way to succeed, and to be able to tell the story so eloquently. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And thank you for your inspiration while I was forming all of the KPOC surveys. 26 layers of interests that I have, and another lesson from the book I think I've integrated into my own life is to be a great student of your environment. And if you're gonna participate in a space, if it's within you to evolve, you should attempt that. If you want to be a VP or a CEO, you've got to set new priorities, fresh perspectives, and greater outcomes from the operations of this business to see, not just profits. Another thing he says, another thing Wes said is the money wasn't important. The learning was important. The becoming more was important. The leveling up was important. I feel the same way about boats. And, what I learned from writing my book was, I moved from, a marine tech grad at Georgian College to, a marina operator and a shuttle driver, and eventually a towboat captain, and then a marina administrator, and then an entrepreneur, which is a massive level up, even if you see it as just going out there and scrubbing boats. There was a lot I had to learn about business really fast to ensure that my everyday fully invested in what I believe to be true, which is to be of service, be on the water, and empty the tank every single day. Those very, very important things drove me to be more measurable. And Wes Hall was also extremely measurable, finding new ways, new paths. Like I said, the running back, right? Finding your way through. You're going to take hits, peaks and valleys. That's entrepreneurship. And find a way through. And I literally found a way through to becoming a master of many different tasks, which I then formatted into services and levels, and really becoming systematized in the delivery of my services. And then when I reached remediations and being the raccoon man, when a boat snaps black mold, I'm the guy you call, and I've got a lab full of highly specialized abatement equipment. Now I became a disaster specialist, not just a beautifier of boats. Yes, that's the umbrella. However, there are levels to it, and I found my way to the highest levels of it. And he also explained how his firm, once he had his own under the umbrella of another, built up some business and built up some staff, and then half his staff walked out, which was a mirror of when he first walked in to this proxy sort of niche environment, as half the staff walked out and he had to rise to the occasion. Being the man the moment deserves. It's another book that I'm halfway through and gonna continue now that Bootstraps is done. I feel really, really honored to have walked the same streets, seen a lot of the same hallways and offices as this author, having touched the land of Jamaica, and in a very different way. Like my youth, I was around Kingston when I was very young, and he was probably still there before he got to Toronto, before his dad called for him. And then just, the different factories and, odd jobs he was doing around Toronto. I was getting into entrepreneurship right around that time, and a lot of my clients were bankers and lawyers and Bay Street executives, and I'd be up in their offices picking up checks. Well, I still accepted checks. I don't do that anymore. Everything is paid online, 100% in advance. I will show up on your boat and get her done. But there's just so many paths diverged. Well, where he wrapped up in the book was making a choice between his faith and what he knew was the greatest good he could do with his position in life. And his faith was very, 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 very important to him. I'm sure it still is to this day. But there's a point where you have to look at your collection of experiences and awareness and perspectives and decide, what is the greatest good I can do with this set of skills and awareness? And he took to publishing a paper about Black North, Black excellence, the challenges of Black people in corporate world. And I look at my own business, and I had an experience around the George Floyd time that was deeply, deeply disturbing. And he went through a lot of the stories of those tragedies in those times that are not the front of headlines anymore, but still the lived experience of many Black people, the trauma, the legacy of just keeping our heads down when we're so wise, so creative, so talented, keeping our head down, like the Japanese, right? The nail that stands up gets hammered down, and it's a different sort of philosophy all over the place, but where he took it was genuinely only something you could do if you felt extremely strongly about it, and I do. And the action I've taken with the opportunity that I've created by being a missionary in Jamaica and seeing Montego Bay and Black River and Parati and Top Hill and Kingston and Portmore and all points in between, just weeks after a Category 5 hurricane rips through a place, you gain a new perspective. And the time that I spent in this book and the massive effort I made to publish at webeautifyboats.com/ourwork/kpoc, you can find it there, is I don't know if I call it a legacy project, but it is something that has to happen right now. Civic engagement is extremely important, and I understand that's where he's at right now, is doing his civic engagement part. Wes, if you see this, holler. I feel you. I'm working on something big that you specifically, as the author of that book that I just finished, will thoroughly appreciate. Civic engagement is using your voice to connect community, to connect conversations, to point your energy as a community in the direction of change for the things that you have prioritized together. And that's what these 26 layers about to become more are going to become. But it's a digital output of a map of Jamaica and potentially many other islands and countries. Like I was looking out the window in West End Toronto today and saying, man, I haven't spoken to any of my neighbors in a while, but I know every political season I do go to the constituent's office and shake a hand and say, what do you know about boats? How do you feel about the water? What are your initiatives around aquaculture and the marine industry and recreational boating and tourism? And how do you feel about these things? I want to know. If you're going to get my vote, I want to know. And the conversations I try to have with many people are withdrawn and they share their memes online, and they take a stance that is, I don't know, somehow tragic to me. Like I just don't understand why people can't have open debate about things. But let me just wrap this up. I have some work to do with My Wisdom Oasis right now. mywisdomoasis.com. Please check it out. And one more, gratitude. Thank you. I appreciate you, Wes Hall, for what you've survived and how you chose to thrive. Good job. I appreciate you. See you on the water, eh?